Hey everybody, I'm really sad right now because my favorite League of Legends team just lost, but I'm gonna do some Pokemon analysis. I think that this game, Kevin versus Jacob, was one of the most interesting games of the week. By the way, to everyone, really good games all around. I'm really happy with the improvements that I saw from some of the players. I am glad to see that because I think it's going to make it much more interesting. So let's get into this game. Let's talk right off the bat about the teams that were brought. So regarding Jacob's squad, I don't love the inclusion of Rotom Heat here. I think Rotom Heat seems to be a little suspicious. I honestly would not have mind Hippowdon down here, just to give you extra redundancy for Thundurus. The issue with Rotom in this matchup is that it can't press Volt Switch. That's normally, what Rotom wants to be doing. But the presence of Thundurus here makes that a very risky strategy. I think that the other 5 I like. I think they're very solid. But potentially we could have done a little better than Rotom Heat here. And that's okay. I still think that it's at worst it's an inaccuracy in the team builder. I think that because you more or less nailed the other 5 slots, it's not a big deal. So let's get into the game and let's break it down turn by turn. We start with this matchup, and this is sort of what I'm talking about. We lead into Rotom. I guess Rotom's relatively safe, but we do give Kev momentum, right? Which is not super ideal. Fortunately, it is against Azumarill. Now, giving Azumarill a free turn can be a bit of a disaster against Kevin's team. I think that we should be considering ourselves relatively lucky that we didn't see Belly Drum here, because that would have been almost game. Actually, I don't know. It's possible that this Azumarill set was Belly Drum, but I think we made overall the right decision as we switch into Landorus. Get an Intimidate off. Of course, Landorus doesn't really care about having to take an Aqua Jet to the face. If this was Waterfall, could have been a little more problematic. It does seem to me like this team is perhaps slightly underprepared for Azumarill, which that's actually kind of how it, you can never have every answer to every combination, right? So I don't think that's that big of a deal, but Azumarill definitely does present an issue that we have to solve here. I wouldn't mind seeing Starmie potentially also in place of this Rotom. Because it can probably 1v1 Azumarill. I don't know for sure. Don't quote me on that. Maybe Empoleon is just good enough to bring here, because it does provide a very solid answer to Scizor and give you a great switch into Weavile. But regardless, we intimidate the Azumarill. This is great. Right off the bat, I think that we are doing awesome. You say it was a misclick. I think that you clicked a good move. for what it's worth. Maybe it wasn't the move you wanted, but we get a good position here as we get rocks up. We're going to probably get at least, I mean, worst case scenario, we go straight into Scizor and defog it. I think that that's fine if that's what happens. We see some really interesting tech from Kevin. He's running a very fast Cresselia, or you're running a very slow Landorus. I'm a little surprised by this, but I don't think it's the end of the world, because I think that getting the slow pivot here into Volcarona is huge. And this is immediately a very compromising position for Kevin. Let's pull up the calculator, and let's take a look at how this matchup breaks down precisely. I'm going to assume that we are running some kind of Lumberry set here. This seems reasonable to me. And then this is Azumarill. I'm not sure. It could be AV. That would make a lot of sense. I think that Belly Drum is probably the best set. Let's assume worst case scenario. This is AV. I don't know what Kevin's set is for sure. But if this is AV, oh wow, okay. So actually maybe this was the right move that you've made here, because Waterfall is so incredibly threatening. It does just kill you. So I think that we make the right play. Maybe now that I know this calc, that we are not dealing good damage to this Azumarill with Volcarona. Maybe we just want to double switch here. I don't know. Again, we don't have a great answer for this Azumarill. It's relative. Oh, actually, we know it's not AV. We know that it is. We know that it has Citrus Berry, which really makes me believe that it's Belly Drum. And the fact that it also isn't pressing Waterfall at any point further leads me to believe this. Now, I guess that we don't necessarily know that at the time, right? So I let's operate under the assumption that this could be some kind of Assault Vest set, because I think that's reasonable to conclude, given that your team, this is a really effective wall for Keldeo, and this is also even a decent answer to Altaria. And we don't know how the damage ranges are breaking out. Wouldn't have hate to have seen a pivot into like an immediate double switch here, but I also think your line is fine. We probably double switch into Keldeo, but it would end up being a bad matchup. And so this is a good example of why Rotom Heat is sort of a liability in this battle. In an ideal world, Rotom is an answer to the Azumarill, but we can't press Volt Switch here because we do not want to be giving Thundurus a free switch. In fact, because of Volt Switch, we actually don't even make Thundurus take rocks damage here, which is a bit of a disaster. We see the Aqua Jet come out. We see Toxic land on the Azumarill. I think that this is a decent win. We're trading blows here. I think that Kevin should have gone into Thundurus on this turn, but he doesn't. Understandable. I like the Toxic. I think that Kevin's team is pretty soft to Toxic. We get a great chunk onto Azumarill, and all of a sudden, Kevin has kind of found himself in a really compromised position, where his most important defensive piece is more or less dead. And he has to sack Cresselia if he wants to revive it, who's also an important defensive piece here. So with that in mind, we get to set up, right? So I think that you make the right play. We see the setup here, and we see some really cool flamethrower tech. Loved this. But I think it's very creative. My question is this even better than pressing Earthquake? Let's find that out. We have an Altaria. Let's just call this. I'm just going to assume we're using the set. We see Earthquake is not even close to the damage. So this is really nice. I like this adaptation. I don't know what your last move is on this. You have Frustration, I know, which is correct. And you have Dragon Dance. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think the Flamethrower was nice technology. We luck into a burn here. And so if I'm you after this turn, I would probably be going straight into Volcarona. Now with the knowledge that Scizor more or less has to switch or sack itself. And if Scizor chooses to sack itself, it will basically be complete fodder for Volcarona. So Scizor sacks itself. Would have been really nice for this to be Volcarona. But instead we have this really awkward matchup. And you can't really touch Thundurus here. This thing just gets to set up in your face, which is a bit of an issue. Now, this is, I guess, one of the arguments for Rotom Wash is that it can switch in here. But it's certainly not comfortable. We probably should be running a way to hit Thundurus. Thundurus should be kind of the most important thing in your mind. But we go to Keldeo. I think it's interesting that Kevin switches out here because it certainly would have KO'd. Kevin more or less had the game in hand. But now we're in a very awkward position, Jacob. I guess maybe this team builder is a bit more, this team preview is a lot more disastrous than I initially thought. It felt like we had more opportunities here. Kevin makes a nice play. Let's go back. And let's just think about this game. Let's review it, and let's just think about all the times that we could have gotten a Pokemon in to set up. Which should be our goal, I think. I think that this is fine. We get an Aqua Jet. We know based on this damage, this certainly can't be banded. We have a slow Landorus. I don't love that. I guess it's... I don't hate it at the same time. Like we don't necessarily expect Cresselia to be running high speed, but Maybe the right play is always to just press Giga Train here. Because worst case scenario, we'll get some knowledge on what kind of set we're facing. Azumarill will Aqua Jet. It's going to hurt. But we're going to get a fat amount of recovery. And I actually don't see a good answer on Kevin's team if we don't have Azumarill anymore. So I think that Giga Drain here is just definitely the right click. I don't hate this. So we see Aqua Jet, which tells me, at the very least, that this Azumarill probably doesn't have Waterfall. So we need to go right back into Volcarona and just press Quiver Dance again. I think is just the right move. Because now Quiver Dance is guaranteed to KO from this percent, right? We need to be aware of these kind of thresholds. Like, this is a very critical threshold. So maybe this switch out is quite genius, because we get a Scout, and then we get back in to Volcarona. So I would say that the switch into Lando is smart. I like this play a lot, but then the decision to go into Rotom on this turn is essentially the difference between winning and losing. Because I don't necessarily see a ton of angles afterwards for you. Kevin can just play very safely. I think that might be something that you did here, is that you just played a little too safely. And that's okay. But I think that we should seek to understand what our team is. And what is our team? Our team is hyper offense. And when we're playing hyper offensive teams, the beauty of hyper offense is that every Pokemon on your team makes progress to an extent, right? But we, I think, see a bit too much switching around in these early turns. We Volt switch out, and then once again this needs to be Volcarona or Altaria. I think Altaria is fine here. We get a free Swords Dance. So what I would have liked to have seen here is, once we know the Scizor is coming in, I would have loved just going straight back to Volcarona. I know I'm kind of beating this with a stick, but Scizor really struggles to threaten Volcarona, and essentially is just a free turn for it. So if we're ever seeing Volcarona enter, we need to be switching. Or sorry, if we're ever seeing Scizor enter, we need to be switching to Volcarona. Because it's just a massive punish on Scizor's entry. And we've already broken down the most convincing answer to Volcarona in Azumarill. So any free turn with Volcarona here almost wins. So here, but the Flamethrower is cute, but it's not right. It's not correct. We should have gone straight to Volcarona. Volcarona is really a huge blessing for your team, Jacob. And we should be treating it in every game like it is the main character. Because it is the main character of every game. It is a Pokemon that wins the game given a free turn, right? And that is just so incredible here. If Volcarona is able to enter instead of Magnezone here, which again we have another good entry opportunity for Volcarona. Kevin chooses to sack the Scizor, so I actually think that Volcarona's entry on this turn is bad. I think I would have preferred just staying in with Altaria and seeing if Kevin is willing to just trade here. But yeah, anyway. So we've kind of thrown away our best entry points already. Kevin has made, I would say, a bit of a mistake in allowing Volcarona to enter so many times already and letting you break down his best check in Azumarill. Also, I think he made a bit of a mistake. If this Azumarill was indeed belly drumming on turn 1 here would have been a lot more threatening than using Aqua Jet. Kevin, your team is sort of operating under a very similar principle to Jacob. I think that you're identifying your positions a little better. But now let's talk about how we clean this game up, because essentially the game is more or less lost for Jacob from this point. We don't really have any high value clicks anymore, and Kevin has succeeded in removing rocks. So maybe the best thing to do here is just Calm Mind with Keldeo. I don't know what the Keldeo set is, but Icy Wind is just not high enough leverage of a play to justify its use here. Yeah, it hits Volcarona super effectively, but we probably should be pressing Scald because we don't expect, if we don't have Calm Mind, because we don't expect Volcarona to, or we don't expect the Thundurus to stay in. And if we do expect the Thundurus to stay in, Icy Wind still doesn't necessarily solve the problem. But anyway, we see Psyshock, and then we give Thundurus a free entry again because of the Magnezone, and again, this is the issue with the double electric. We don't want to be giving free turns to Thundurus. Thundurus is kind of like Volcarona in that the game is sort of about it, but we just get bolted here. It's a really risky move. I guess that we don't have a good way to attack Thundurus, which is okay. But Kevin, I think that we do a solid job here. We identify that Azumarill is our most important Pokemon, and that we need to attack it. But yeah, again, here's the issue with Volt Switch. We just don't have good answers. Really well played here, Kev. You're doing a great job at not giving Jacob any angles here to get back in the game. And Thundurus is just going to sweep from here. We have some hidden power. I'm not sure what this is. Maybe this is hidden power fire. I think that's a bit overkill for what it's worth. We're going to 1v1 Scizor with Thunderbolt anyway. If, you know, the idea here is to... if the idea with the Magnezone is to trap Scizor and kill it, I think that Kevin has shown that he is wanting to mostly bring Scizor as kind of a bulky utility mon. So I don't know how high leverage that is. I think that what we need to be doing to stop Kev's team is minimize entry angles for Thundurus. I think we didn't do a good job of that here. Let's go back. Let's see how many times Thundurus gets to switch in for free this game. Just, he probably even had more entry angles. 1, 2, 3. 3 entry angles, 3 free turns. This is, I guess, a lesson for anyone that's game planning against Kev in the future. This Pokemon and Weavile, Thundurus Therian and Weavile, are insanely offensively threatening. And we cannot be giving them free turns. And then if we are an offensive team, we need to be finding any and all angles for our Pokemon to set up. And missing just 1 or 2 of them can be a bit of a disaster. I think that, Kevin would have felt like a complete idiot, which not saying he is, but because he gave Volcarona so many free entry angles. But unfortunately, Jacob, you did not find those angles, and that's okay. But I think it's just going to be something that's important to keep track of going forward. I think that you did a good job of it in week 1. You found a really nice angle for Keldeo to set up and sweep. But we need to find them for Volcarona and Altaria a little more as well. Altaria kind of finds the wrong time with Scizor still full health to set up, because it can't one-shot this Scizor set with Flamethrower, which was an interesting piece of tech. I did like that, but I think it's just something that we need to be keeping in mind in the future. So I guess that's the takeaway from this video. Find the free turns for your Pokemon, because they will happen, especially when those Pokemon can threaten to take over the game by themselves in a single turn. And that is really the essence of what Volcarona does. And that's okay. So that's this really long analysis of this video. I think it was I did a bit of backtracking on my initial takes. We need to be thinking about the kind of sets our opponent is running. We need to be thinking about what stops our sweepers from sweeping, and at what point do those Pokemon no longer stop our sweepers. And Kevin kind of threw away Azumarill's health very early, and we had a bit of a couple of mistakes in the team builder that didn't punish the Azumarill enough. And we then didn't find the moments where Azumarill was chunked enough that Volcanion was threatening to single-handedly win the game. So just, important to keep these things in mind. Again, Kevin, very well played, man. Really proud of you for this one. You made some mistakes early, but once you got your lead, you really put your foot on the gas and took any and all hope for Jacob out of the picture. So here's this 30-minute long analysis of this 24-move Pokemon battle.